Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Classical Revolution here on IDAGIO. My name is Rachel Fenlon, and I am the host of this weekly series in which I'm chatting with guests, musicians, and prominent figures in the music industry about what drives them, about what curiosity means to them and risk-taking. I have the great pleasure of interviewing today Steven Isserlis. One of the foremost cellists of our time, Steven Isserlis is not only celebrated for his profound musicianship and technical mastery, but also as a dedicated educator and author and broadcaster. And it's a great pleasure to have him here on the show today. Please welcome Steven Isserlis. Hi, Steven.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
Well, I'm not there. I'm here.
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, yes. Steven, I love just to begin by asking my guests what their earliest interactions with music and whether particularly there was a musical moment or a series of moments which stand out to you as significant for you.
Well, there's no moment in my life without music, because my grandfather was actually a famous pianist and composer in his day. Everybody in Britain knew him after the war because he broadcast so much. And then my father was a very keen amateur violinist. My mother was a piano teacher. And I never remember a time when my two older sisters were not playing music. My older sister Annette was first of all a pianist, now she's a violist. And my middle sister Rachel also played the piano, but she's a violinist. So yeah, I don't remember a day in my life without music.
And was your first instrument, did you begin on the cello? Yeah.
I did when I was very little, when I was 6. Well, first I started and I wouldn't take it seriously and I played on the wrong side of the bridge. Thought I was being very funny, but nobody else did, which is something that happens a lot in my life. But so they made me give up, and then I started again later in the year, I think. I can't remember dates, but I know I was 6 when I started. And then I started the piano about a year later.
Okay.
I was already sold on the cello by then.
And I read that you also made chamber music at home with your siblings from a very, very young age. And
very young age, yes, probably from about 7.
Wow.
I was about 7, they were 10 and 13. We started to play together. And it sort of went on that my son, who plays the cello a bit, not enough, but not as but he loves to sight read chamber music, and he occasionally used to play at Christmas with his 2 cousins, Rachel's 2 daughters, one of whom is a violist in Eisenach, and the other of whom plays the cello. So they used to play together, which is a lovely thing. I mean, it bonds a family. I think there's nothing better than music for bonding a family. Yeah. And still, my sisters and I are very, very close, partly because we know all the same people and we feel very similarly about music, and it keeps us very close.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I didn't grow up in a musical family, but I can imagine that it just becomes such an integrated language also for you, communicating. Yeah.
Sort of thinking music, yeah.
Yeah.
You speak any other languages?
True. From the girl who has lived in Germany for 5 years and I'm still struggling with that language. Yes.
I speak restaurant German. And well enough, after a concert in Germany, I can usually suddenly understand everything everybody's saying. But then when I look at a newspaper or something, and I wish I spoke German, because if I spoke German, then I could read Schumann's letters in the original. Exactly. I could understand the leader I love to listen to, but I don't.
Well, but I mean, this book, I wanted to ask you about it anyway at some point, the Schumann book, which is so wonderful. It's the Young Advice to Musicians, which you sort of transcribed. And I mean, what was that like, kind of, I suppose it was like interpreting the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Schumann wrote this wonderful advice for young musicians, but he wrote it in the first half of the 19th century for a sort of young musician who hardly exists now, I would think. So I just wanted to make it more mainstream for today. The generation that watches YouTube and knows music through recordings and things. And I just wanted to be the sort of the conduit, sort of the vessel through whom Schumann's basic ideas sort of translated into a way that might feel more relevant to a young musician today.
It's
It's a lovely thing to do. I love to, seeing co-authors Robert Schumann and me. It's a great thrill.
That's pretty cool. You've spoken and written extensively about the role of an interpreter and about interpretation. And you say something that kind of sparked my interest in one of your articles on your website, where you publish often interesting subjects. And you speak about that deep sympathy is the sort of foundation of a true musical understanding. And I was curious to hear you speak about what that deep sympathy, like how you translate that.
Did I give an example?
Sorry?
Did I give an example?
No, so you're rather speaking about, I mean, I can say it in a larger context with a quote if you like.
Sure, then
Okay.
Exactly what I meant.
Okay, yeah, so in terms of interpreting a piece, you say the piece will gradually become a trusted friend with whom one can build an ever deeper relationship. But that relationship has to be founded on deep sympathy, which has to be built on solid foundations of true understanding, to which there are no valid shortcuts, as in human relationships, really. And I think this is a marvelous quote.
Very wise, yes. I didn't know I
Wow.
recognized that. That's good. No, it's absolutely true. By which I mean that you have to understand, like you have to understand a friend, you have to get to know a piece of music, know what makes it tick, what makes it what it is, understand the form, which is the music, really. Debussy said the emotion is the form. Or did he say the form is the emotion? I think he said.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, that's the story of the piece. You have to know the shape of it. You have to know where every note is going. And so you have to understand why a composer goes in that musical direction, why he puts the markings he does as well as the notes. And, the more you understand it, the deeper your relationship will be and the more convincing your performance will be, of course.
Do you ever completely change your idea of an interpretation of a piece?
I'm sure it does change, but I always use the analogy. I mean, I don't normally have a sort of revelation, oh no, that was completely wrong, and switch around. That doesn't happen often. I mean, but some changes. But it's more like a terrible thing. Day by day, you look in the mirror, you don't notice that you're getting older and wrinklier, but you are, and you're changing. And it's the same thing with music, except in music is a good thing, I think, to get not exactly wrinklier, but sort of more, more mature, getting into the piece more and more as you get older. And so interpretations change without you even realizing.
Right. And to the point of something where you would actually drastically disagree with an interpretation that you might have done earlier. Has that ever happened to you?
It has happened, but it's not that often.
Okay.
I mean, I don't really listen to my playing of the past, but occasionally I encounter it and I can tell it's me. It's my voice, and I don't, some things I would do differently, but it's not. I'm not usually violently opposed to the way I played something in the past.
And when you speak about kind of understanding the story of music, how do you deal with sort of material that's more abstract as a musician? If there's not such a clear...
Yeah, I mean, it's true that some composers, some pieces I can really, I think it is telling a specific extra musical story. There are things like Shostakovich Trio, for instance. And then some, Beethoven, for instance, Beethoven sonatas. I don't really think, I think just about the musical material. Of course, the emotion, but I don't normally make a story out of it because the way he uses the musical material is a story in itself. And just sort of see, especially in the late sonatas, how he takes these little cells and does amazing things with them. I mean, like the C major sonata, the fourth sonata, everything comes from the first two bars. And that itself is a story which you don't need to sort of say that a man did this or he did that. No, it's the music itself. It's not really abstract. I'm not sure abstract is the right word, but it's pure. It's pure music.
Yeah, and a sort of like a code in itself for something.
It's not cinematic at all, whereas
Yeah.
something like Shostakovich, which I love, is very cinematic very often.
Yeah.
Not always, not in some of the piano pieces, but in at least the cello sonata, the cello concertos, and the piano trio, which is the big piano trio, which are the main pieces I play. They're all cinematic, I'd say. That's just his style. That's the way he is.
How important do you feel humor is in music? What and why?
Essential. Well, I mean, it depends on the piece. Not every piece is funny. I don't usually tend to laugh at the Adagietto from Mahler's Fifth Symphony. But I mean, humor is essential. People don't get the humor of Beethoven or Haydn or Mozart or Bach. I think they're missing a lot. They're missing the essence sometimes. I mean, it's, actually Sándor Weig, the great Hungarian violinist, he said to me once, without humor, there is no tragedy. And I know what he means.
Yeah.
I think especially Beethoven, I think he's played, and Bach, are played without any humor at all, and that kills it for me.
Interesting. I mean, I think I could be guilty of that actually.
Really?
When I think about Beethoven, now that you say it, I think I miss a lot of humorous moments.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe the funniest of all, actually. The bits that always make me laugh still, no matter how many times I've played them. He's so funny, he's so rude, and he's so just lovable.
I suppose the difficulty can be if you have this sort of reverence for a composer, that humor feels out of place somehow. But of course,
that's like, so never sort of wanting to go close to anybody. They'll never have any friends because they're so
right.
I mean, even that C major sonata of Beethoven, which is the fourth sonata for piano and cello, it starts with this magical, esoteric beginning, and then a very angry first faster section, first allegro, and then mystic. I mean, it just takes you into another world. The slow beginning of the second movement, only 2 movements, and then hilarious. He goes straight from that mysticism, from that sort of sense of heaven, into just silly jokes in the last thing, and joy. And he even ends the piece with a joke. He has everything. That's what my friend Olli Mustonen said about the late quartets. They're the most profound pieces ever written. They're also the funniest pieces ever written. They are incredibly funny, the late quartets.
Okay. I think I need to listen to it with different ears. I like it.
And the right performances.
Yes, true.
Performances make it very unfunny, but that's true of comic plays as well.
Yeah, exactly. Something I like to ask in this series with my guests is this idea of what risk-taking feels like musically, and I'm curious to hear what risk-taking feels like for you. How would you translate that to yourself as a musician?
Well, it's a risk to go on stage and play. You have to take risks. I mean, one doesn't even think of it as taking risks in a way. At least I don't. But yes, when you program something, that you never played, that's a risk. Will you be able to play it? When you go on stage, when I go on stage playing from memory, I'm always terrified. Memory lapse. And playing with people, you can't play with the same people all the time. Well, I do play. I've got a certain sort of group of people I tend to play with, but sometimes I expand it, and that's a risk. Will you get on? So on. It's probably the risks you take aren't as worrying as those a surgeon has to take. You can always comfort yourself with that.
Okay.
Like once, I was very nervous. I can't remember why, about a concert in Rome. And I was taking a walk earlier that day, and I passed the Colosseum. And I thought, the people who went out to sort of meet the lions must be even more nervous than I am. It was somehow comforting, that thought.
I like that. Yeah. And I mean something I'm curious about, although it sort of answers itself, is this: do risks manifest differently when you're alone in the practice room or when you're on stage?
Well, yes, I mean, it's not much of a risk to be in a practice room.
Exactly. Yeah.
Risk to go out on stage.
As a very prolific recording artist. I'm curious what you view or what you seek to explore in recording music and how that differs from live performance for you. Do the two?
Yeah, it's not that different. I mean, you've got to keep the feeling of live performance when you're recording. But of course, it doesn't have the same biting nerve, at least unless there's an orchestra sitting there and you've got a limited amount of time, then you do have a certain pressure to get it right in time. But yeah, I mean, I always think it's just one performance. You're with sort of, it's a photograph with sort of slightly, you've cleaned up. So nobody wants to hear the same squeaks and scratches and out of tune notes, over and again. So you clean them out, you clean the photograph, but that is a photograph of the way you played that piece on that particular day.
Mm-hmm. No, sorry.
I generally like recording. Actually, the last one I did was last summer, and I sort of, it was during lockdown. It was just after it started to ease off, and it was a strange time. I had 3 days to do a solo album, unaccompanied. I must say, the first 2 days I'd slept really badly. I just didn't feel I was playing my best. I was worried about that. And then the third day, suddenly I felt so much better, and I just played through almost all the pieces. And Thomas Addis, the composer, I was recording a short piece by him, so he came to make sure I was doing it properly. And I said, can you sit? Can you do me a favor? Can you just sit and listen? And I play through a recital, and you're my audience. And then I was really inspired because I respect him so much, and I know he understands so much about music, and that felt great. So, it's not, as I say, basically you have to have that feel of a live, of a live performance. You have to keep it for the recording.
Yeah, and I like so much what you say about it being a snapshot of one day, because sometimes it's an easy mistake to make as the listener, that you think that you hear a recording and it's that person's, then their interpretation of this piece.
No, exactly.
And so
but it'll change. Yeah,
exactly.
You can really hear that all sort of the artists of the past who do have live recordings on, and then you hear the recordings. They're quite different.
Yep. Yeah, I like that so much, actually, all these really old live recordings. And then especially, I mean, in this golden age of recording, where we have so many recordings of the same artist to compare those. Yeah. I'd love to ask you about curating, because so you have quite a bit of experience. You were guest curator for the Wigmore Hall and the 92nd Street Y and Salzburg Festival, I think. Yeah, and I'm curious how you view that role and how you choose programming, because I loved the Wigmore program with speaking about the wartime parallel. That was fantastic.
Yes. I don't know. I just get these ideas sometimes in the middle of the night or something.
Okay.
It's a good festival, and then I have, I do different repertoire sometimes with different people. Or I think, I think I'm pretty good at persuading my friends to play and even to learn new pieces, because I know what my friends will like musically. Like, for instance, Joshua Bell, I'm pretty good at persuading him because I know the pieces he'll love, even if he doesn't, because he doesn't know them. So I have, a group of people I play with. So chansons I found a fascinating figure. We had a chansons festival. What else did we do? Done, of course, lots of Schumann, because I'm obsessed with Schumann. Lots of Fauré, because I'm obsessed with Fauré. But yes, we had wartime, we had Russian. What else did we do? Mendelssohn and Brahms and so on. It's nice because I love to read I read biographies of composers, I read about composers, I love to read around, and I love reading their letters. And then I'm always fascinated to read around the pieces I'm playing, and that leads you to other pieces, and then you get this sort of program that is both sort of historically makes sense and musically. That's the thing. Challenge. You can't just put things in just because they're interesting. They also have to be worth listening to, and they have somehow to relate to each other in the same program. So I love to do that. It's like creating a menu for a dinner.
Yeah.
And when it falls into place, it's so satisfying. And when the right people say, yes, I'm free, I'll do that. That's a great feeling.
Yes, that's great. I'm so curious about your work as a writer. You've written quite a few books. So you've written 3 children's books.
Well, there's 2 children's books, one
Yeah.
musician's book, and I've just done another book, which is on its last polishing stage now, which is about the Bach suites, which is very different.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. When did you first start writing?
Yeah, school.
Okay.
I love writing essays and
Okay.
stories and things.
And when did you sort of, I'm curious about the texts that you wrote for the children's musical storybooks. Was that your first project?
No, the books came first.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And what sort of gave you that inspiration?
My son. Completely. Yes. My son Gabriel, when he was born. And I tried to give children's concerts before. Some of them were hopeless disaster. I just didn't know how to talk to children. And then he grew up, he got friends who I started to talk to. And then I tried to interest him in music. And then very natural after that. I couldn't find a book about composers that I really wanted to give him, that I thought would ignite him. So I thought, okay, I'll try and write one myself. And then to my delight, Fabers accepted it. I wrote one chapter just for fun about Beethoven, and Fabers accepted it, and then they badgered me for a second book for years. I wouldn't do it, and then eventually I did it. But I thought 2 is enough. And then, I got, actually it was Maxim Vengerov asked me to write something, because he knew my writing, to write a musical story. And so I had the idea to write Little Red Violin, which was based on Little Red Riding Hood. So they're not exactly story books, they're concert pieces for children. So I did Little Red Violin, and then I got composer I'd always admired from hearing her music on TV, and Dudley, she wrote the music. I met her through that, I went and asked her. And then we did Goldie Pegs and the 3 Cellos, and then we did Cindercella. And then again, 3 was enough, but I do like, those are fun. And then touring with the Asian Youth Orchestra, somehow they seemed so keen for advice about how to be young musicians. And then at the same time, for some reason, I was rereading Schumann, and that sort of gave me the idea to write the book for young musicians. And then the Bach suites just came because during lockdown, what else could one play but solo cello repertoire? So I started playing the Bach suites again, having not. And of course, and then I'm reading about them, thinking about them. And then just one day, as I was practicing, I thought, read so much about them, why don't I write a book? So that's what I've done. It'll be out late next year.
Oh, wow. And can you share with us, what's the sort of...
Well, it's sort of everything. It's the history of them. Which I find fascinating. I don't know whether other people will. I hope they do. And then it's some sort of questions I'm often asked, some rules and advice for players playing the Bach suites. And then there's a thing about what I think is the story behind them, behind the music, and then just a description of each movement. It's sort of a handbook to the Bach suites. I sort of like it. My publisher did have to tell me, remember, this is not meant to be a children's book. So I said anything I write is going to have silly humor in it. I can't help it. But there's a lot of research involved as well. And piggybacking off other people's research. That's what one does.
Right. Oh, no, that's very exciting. I'm looking forward to that.
It's sort of fun to write. I mean, fun. It's hard work to write a book. But it was sort of satisfying.
Wonderful. I actually have a couple of questions about the cello, being slightly ignorant myself. No, I was wondering if you could how you would best describe the difference between playing, which you often play on gut strings, the difference between playing on gut strings and playing on steel strings, if you could sort of summarize what.
Yeah, I mean, for me, gut strings are more human, they're more simple. No, they're not, they're more alive in their sound, so you can play more simply. It doesn't sound bad to play without any vibrato or any portato on gut strings because the sound is organically alive. Whereas steel strings, you have to wake up the sound. You have to vibrate. You have to do more to it to make it alive. On the other hand, I think some pieces are better on steel, some pieces are better on gut. I suppose steel is more that, and gut is more like that, the sound. So gut strings is not always as piercing, but for me, it's a warmer sound, basically. But I like playing on both. I do like, now I'm playing Schumann Concerto next week, so of course that will be on gut. I can't imagine playing that on steel, but next month I'm going to Japan. I'm playing Shostakovich and Prokofiev and Kabalevsky and things, so I'm taking steel strings for that.
Okay, interesting. It's
for the repertoire.
Yeah, depends on the repertoire, and then it's some. Yeah, that's. Yeah, I was always wondering. And then I also read that you work a lot with authentic instruments as well, and you've for example you've played on Beethoven's cello. I read.
Yes.
So of course I have to ask what that experience was like.
It was great. It's Anders Schiff and I gave a recital of 3 Beethoven sonatas at the Beethoven House in Bonn, where his 2 cellos are. But this is the better one. Yeah, I loved it. It's not a big sound at all, but it's got a very special quality, I think. The M pin was a problem because it was tiny and I didn't know what to do. I can't remember what we decided in the end about that. And I was meant to play it again this year, but of course that's gone by the by. It's a lovely sound. I think I was the first person to try it out for like 50 years or something, they said, but it didn't seem dead at all, the sound. It seemed very happy to be played.
Yeah,
I like playing strange cellos, like I played the trench cello, which is basically just a wooden box, a hollow wooden box, but it was played in the trenches of the First World War. I recorded on that.
I heard the Debussy recording.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, the Debussy is not on. That's on.
Oh, it's not on.
No, but the trench cello is the Swan and the.
Okay. Later, yes, but I did listen to this recording this week. Yeah.
Lovely sound. Again, it's small sound, but that doesn't matter. Yeah. Of course it is. It's a small box. It's a sort of do-it-yourself kit, holiday cello. That's what it was. Taken into the trenches, and then inside this trench cello is a message from a quite famous poet, Edmund Blunden, who he reunited with it in about 1960. And he's writing, so it's so nice to see the cello again. I remember it so well from the trenches.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's nice to play cello with that history.
Yes. I'm always curious to ask how political you feel, or my guests feel as musicians, and whether you personally feel like music or art can be political, and how.
Well, I'm very wary of talking about politics, partly because I see so many musicians make fool of themselves, and actors particularly, make such fools of themselves talking about politics. I think basically music is not political. I mean, people occasionally say, why'd you go there to play? And I said, well, you go there, which is actually just as bad. I think there were times I would not have gone to places. I wouldn't have been very welcome in Nazi Germany with my lineage, but maybe South Africa under apartheid. I think I would not. In fact, I did not go there. I was asked. It just felt uncomfortable. You wouldn't be playing for the right people. You'd be playing. But as long as you're playing for the right people and strengthening them, somehow with music, I think it's difficult to justify not playing somewhere. But then, and if there's a cause you really want to support, it's usually humanitarian, I think, of it, rather than political. Like, for instance, I'm playing soon in a charity concert for Armenia. But again, I don't want to get involved with the politics. I just love Armenia. And I love Armenians, so I want to play to support them because they're having such a difficult time. So I think one has to stick to what one knows. Go around making great sort of swashbuckling statements about politics, and then somebody who knows much more could come and shout me down. But of course, I have very strong preferences.
Mm. Mm.
And the 20th, I'll be a little bit happier, but I'm not saying any more about that.
Okay. Kind of continuing on that, how do you feel our role is as a musician within society? What do you feel that role is? What in today's sort of world?
To uplift people, I think. It really is. That's all we can do. I mean, you know, I don't think of playing music for a purpose. I'm playing music because, you know, it's taking us to a better world. That's what Fauré said, and he said to show us what something that is better than reality, than our world. And you're doing that, but I don't want to proselytize with music. I think it's dangerous, because then people everywhere suffer, and there's always grey areas, and you just have to be careful. And if you become a banner displayer with your playing, but if you feel strongly about a cause and you want to help it, and you want to play in aid of it, that's fine. But just, music is not politics. Music is music.
Well, Steven, thank you so much for making time and coming here today, or coming on the virtual show.
Virtually, yeah.
Yes, exactly. It was so lovely to hear wonderful to hear your thoughts, and thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
And wishing you all the best with the many upcoming projects.
First one I'm quite nervous about. I'm making dinner.
Ooh. Okay.
That's all I'm thinking about at the moment.
Good. Well, on that note.
Thank you very much.
Guten Appetit. Thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and see you next Wednesday.